Matt Derry, Luke Braun, Locked on Lions, Locked on Vikings, the Thursday crossover. Biggest regular season game, some Luke are saying, in the history of the league. Do you buy
in the history of this
that?
matchup?
Do you buy
that's a bit much. But I'm sure there have been other ones. But I was thinking back. I mean, I feel like I've said this every time we've talked this year, Matt. But the fact that this matchup is so colossal, when I mean, just like 3 years ago, this would have been on the 9th slot on Fox at 1 p.m. Eastern. Like,
would have been the Ron
we would have.
Game.
Yeah, they would have been pulling up college announcers. I mean, this is nothing. This used to be nothing, this sleepy thing. But now it's this marquee matchup, and it's Vikings-Lions. It wasn't supposed to be this, and I love that. These two dome teams in the NFC North. But yeah, like this is by far the most, and maybe even the only time that there's been like a possibly season-defining Vikings-Lions game. Like if whichever of these teams loses, if they go one and done in the playoffs because they got to go on the road and play like Baker Mayfield, and that's tough, this will be the game that is seen as the one that defines the season. As, man, they were looking right at it, but they just couldn't get past their rivals. And I can't remember a time when either team's season came down to a Vikings-Lions game. It was always, but there's been plenty of times where it came down to a Lions-Packers game or a Vikings-Bears game or Vikings-Packers, but I can't think of a time when this was more than just another one in the regular season. I think that's beautiful.
The game, what game was it? Well, it wasn't at the end of the year, but the Golden Tate somersault into the end zone game had some meaning years ago.
That was week 4, 2017, I think.
Yeah. Well,
it was, the Vikings were 13-3, and that was one of the 3.
Yes, but nothing like this. I agree with you.
No.
And the Lions and Vikings have played some, like you're right, some stinker week 18s and week 17s have not mattered. And it's awesome. It is so much fun. How do the Vikings get this done, Luke? How do you see it that they go in there and win? What do they have to do?
Yeah, I think it's your P's and Q's on offense, right? Like everybody sees what has happened to this Lions defense. There's a lot of tape on it. And I think you'd be crazy if you didn't think the Vikings were going to be able to move the ball here. But you look at the other side. And this Lions offense has had the keys to Flores. They have owned this defense in the past few games. But it's every time you get back in the ring, it's harder and harder and harder to repeat it, because the Vikings are going to have a different answer this time. They know that what they brought to the last few doesn't work. They're not going to just bring the same. So if the Vikings can get Jared Goff uncomfortable, which they have not been able to do. Goff's been getting the ball out totally untouched in all of these games. And interestingly, they didn't really blitz in that last game. And this is a stat I know you're not going to get anywhere else. That cover 0 look that the Vikings have with everybody strung out on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
The Lions were the one team that they barely ran it against. They ran it twice in that game. That's as little as any other game this whole year. They didn't use it. And maybe that's because they thought the Lions could beat it. Maybe they just thought they had a different idea. But maybe they bring that a little bit more this time. Maybe they still don't. And that is a sign of respect, by the way. The teams that they have brought it the most against are like the Titans and teams with rookie quarterbacks, like the Bears. But against the Lions, they didn't feel like that was the way to go. So did they go away from what they wanted last time? And that's why the Lions were able to score, on 4 straight long, sustained touchdown drives. Maybe. And then they got to kind of figure that out. But if the Vikings can get those disruptions, force those turnovers the Lions have been so good at avoiding, and prevent themselves from that like turnover avalanche that seems to happen in all of these Lions games, where, they get up by a score or two, and then suddenly there's a turnover, and then it's a 3-score game, and then you're just chasing it the whole time. You got to avoid that little sequence, that avalanche. And the Vikings have given that avalanche to other teams. So if one of those happens to one of these teams, that could be the key. Just who gets that nice streak, that one, that crazy quarter where you're going out of it and all of your beat reporters are tweeting about how much of a disaster that quarter was. Or will this be a little bit more back and forth and stay on the knife's edge for the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I really, truly see this as a track meet. I think, number one, Dan Campbell, I think this is for Coach of the Year. I think the winner of this game wins Coach of the Year.
Maybe. Although those odds are off of FanDuel already, so I think it might already be a little decided, but perhaps.
So I think Dan Campbell's still got to be himself in this game. And if there's an opportunity for 3, but he knows right now our defense isn't getting it done and I got to go for it, just still be yourself. That, number one, is a key for me. Number 2, I said it earlier. There's 2 guys out there right now that could get flagged for being too, overhyped in this game. And that's Darius Smith,
discipline,
who's always out for blood against the Vikings, because he thought he got screwed over by them and Green Bay. And like I said, Robertson and Jefferson, I think is going to be just a knockdown, drag out street fight, those two. So
are they going to man it up? Are they going to leave that matchup to happen, or is this going to be more of like a zone thing?
I think Aaron Glenn's who he is. I think he loves man, and I think he wants to put his guys. Look, Justin Jefferson in a zone where he gets the ball and goes could be scary too.
Yeah, like the Lions play without fear.
So good.
Like that's the Dan Campbell thing. They play without fear, and everybody else has played with fear against the Vikings. When you play with fear and you contract and you do a bunch of perimeter screens and you try to, live in your quick game and off defensively, you bracket Justin Jefferson because you're scared of him. Everything that the other teams do that plays into the Vikings' hand, they do out of fear. And the Lions say, all right, Justin, you can get your 150. But we're going to try to win the game anyways. That has been, I've gone on these crossovers all season, Matt, and I've said, well, here's how the Lions did it. So maybe you want to go take that. I think that's the reason the Lions have become so good is that lack of fear. And I do think that it sort of neutralizes some of the stuff that's worked so well for the Vikings all season.
And I'll say, no, I think you're spot on, Luke. And I think the biggest, another key just real fast is ball control. The Lions offensive line is so damn good. And if they can push Minnesota around a little bit, Gibbs, Craig Reynolds, Jamar Jefferson, the three backs that they used and utilized well Monday night, can keep Minnesota and the guys we talked about, Addison and Hawk and Jefferson and Darnold off the field, Aaron Jones, that'll be a plus. The Lions have to continue to run the football and do what they do. Do you have a prediction? Do you think your boys are going to do this?
I have no idea. The over-under is insane. This game is going to be insane. I know better than to try to predict it.
I know.
I will say, I'll give you one more key, though, to this one, and that is how the Vikings align their safeties. Last game, they aligned their safeties in a lot of too high. They love to align too high. They do this all the time, and to some degree, this happens to them in every game, where teams will run the ball a little bit because they got to get a safety to fill in the alley, and they can find the gap that's the safety's gap. That works a little bit. They basically accept that as a cost of doing business for the coverages that they do. But the Lions really took advantage of it in that first game. So if the Vikings can either do better out of too high run fits, which is a little bit like saying, well, why didn't you just win more games? Like, way easier said than done. Or do they kind of bite that bullet, get Harrison Smith in the box a little more, get Josh Metellus in the box a little more, and try to fit these things up a little bit stronger? Since the last time we played, there's been a sort of breakout of an unknown guy named Jalen Redmond. He's good for a couple of really awesome, like knifing TFLs a game. So maybe he becomes a different thing, but that might be a key to slowing down this run game. I think the only thing that feels obvious is that the Vikings offense will work, and the Lions offense has worked the last few games. So it feels like this is going to be a bit of a track meet. If it's not, then somebody, either Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores, figured something out.
Lions going for the season series sweep, of course, winning in week 7, as Luca talked about before, on a Jake Bates field goal at the Horn. I'm going to keep my prediction also for later on in the week. I'm with you. I have no idea either, but I'll tell you this.
I don't need to try to guess I don't need to tell you in advance what's going to happen. You want to sit down and watch this game. Why would I spoil it?
Ford Field's going to be rocking. It's going to be crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't
wait. And the All Blacks?
That's what it sounds like. The Lions.
Yeah, they tweeted the Lions.
They were going to wear
official
their
account
old throwbacks, but it sounds like they're going to go to the black, and we'll see what that does. If they lose this game in those black uniforms, I can guarantee you never see them again.
Oh my God, yeah, that's so crazy.